He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence, like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals. Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error, but the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously. And that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage. Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous? Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal. Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable. Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out to expose Ava for the home wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. This is my home. Get out of my way, she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled. Ava sneered. I have every right to ask you to leave. Elizabeth was trembling with fury. You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife. With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. Jordan left these for you, she said. He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave. Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage. Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs, Marcus warned. But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal. It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple. Attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out, Michelle warned. He'll try to discredit you in front of the board. Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava, and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. You're not supposed to be here, Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting. Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders. I am a serious stakeholder, Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation. Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not." Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Miss Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan." Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up. Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. You're investigating her. A slow exhale from the other end. Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas. Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that. Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. Isn't that something your legal team handles? A rueful laugh. Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill two birds with one stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce. Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. I'll do what I can, Elizabeth replied cautiously. But how do I communicate with you about this? Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. And one more thing, Patricia said, before hanging up. People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful. Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. Keep digging, she urged, and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details. Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. That's strange, Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. Why would he agree so easily? Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board. But Michelle wasn't convinced. I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know. The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. We need to talk, face to face. She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half-smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz?" He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel." He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband. Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play. Gregory continued. The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly. Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that. Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. This is preposterous, she began. We demand to see your proof. Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated. Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation. Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet. Ava whirled on Elizabeth. You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me. Elizabeth's blood boiled. We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours. A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. Jordan, I need answers. Were you aware of these trades? Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully, she warned. We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents. The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. Have we sent this to the SEC? Not yet, the advisor responded. We wanted to confront them first. Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars, Hartridge asked. And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation. Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby, he announced quietly. Thank you, Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. I believe we might need you. Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust. Hartridge's face remained stony. I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability. Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on. Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. Stand down, sir, the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. Let him go. This is a private matter. Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises. Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that. I'm on the board. Not anymore, Hartridge said grimly. I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you. A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Miss Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. "They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines, "Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading fraud and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future. If you found this story gripping, insightful, or inspiring, we invite you to be a part of our community. Like this video, share it with friends who need a reminder that courage can emerge from chaos, and subscribe for more real-life drama and empowering tales. Let Elizabeth's story serve as a beacon, no matter how ruthless the betrayal. There's always a path to reclaim your power and build a brighter tomorrow. You too can rise like a phoenix. From the outside, Jonathan Cole's life gleamed like a storybook fairy tale. A self-made millionaire in the heart of Manhattan, he graced glossy magazine covers, mingled with world leaders, and never missed a chance to flaunt his success. Yet behind the tall glass windows of his penthouse, tensions brewed. A secret text here, a guarded phone call there, and rumors whispered of a tangled affair that threatened to explode. Meanwhile, Alicia Cole, his pregnant wife, began to sense the cracks in her gilded cage. No one, least of all Jonathan, suspected how quickly a single online leak would unravel his carefully manicured world, ending his career in the span of one unforgettable night. Jonathan Cole's story was the stuff of modern legend. Born to middle-class parents in suburban New Jersey, he had clawed his way to a scholarship at Harvard Business School. There he'd rubbed shoulders with future magnates, forging alliances that would later propel him to the top of the finance world. By age 32, Jonathan had founded Cole Capital Ventures, a private equity firm that specialized in distressed real estate assets, buying low, selling high, and weaving magic in between. His good looks and suave charm made him a darling of the business press. Forbes ran a feature titled Young Titan. Jonathan Cole's meteoric rise, capturing him in a tailored navy suit against the panoramic backdrop of New York City. In the interview, he praised mentors such as Warren Buffett for teaching him patience and Bill Gates for demonstrating philanthropy on a global scale. The crowning moment, though, was his picture-shaking hands with Elon Musk after a speculative investment in aerospace startups. Jonathan glowed with the certainty that he was destined for greatness. It was at a fundraiser in Central Park that he first met Alicia Martinez. She was a non-profit consultant with a passion for arts education. Where Jonathan's approach to conversation was slick and polished, Alicia's was empathetic and earnest. He found her refusal to be dazzled by his reputation oddly refreshing. She was there to talk about underfunded public schools, not hedge funds or leveraged buyouts. By the end of that charity walk, Jonathan had her phone number, and she had a curious spark in her heart. In 2 short years, they were married. Alicia's parents, humble owners of a small bakery in Queens, couldn't believe their daughter was wedding a man so frequently mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. But to Alicia, Jonathan wasn't simply the millionaire. He was the person who showed up unannounced to volunteer at her community events, who wrote personal checks for after-school programs. Their wedding ceremony, held at a historic mansion overlooking the Hudson River, was a glamorous yet heartfelt affair. The tabloids brimmed with gushing coverage, Alicia radiant in lace, Jonathan dashing in a classic tuxedo, smiling as though they had discovered the secret to eternal happiness. At first, their union genuinely seemed magical. Jonathan declared that Alicia grounded him, tethered him to values he might have otherwise forgotten. She brought soul to his ambition. Life in the Cole penthouse sparkled with promise, lavish soirees for global dignitaries, altruistic ventures to build schools in underprivileged neighborhoods, and daily bursts of joy that only two people deeply in love could share. If only that bliss could have lasted. Life moved quickly in Jonathan's orbit. The success of Cole Capital Ventures brought new deals, new acquaintances, and inevitably new pressures. Over time, Alicia witnessed the subtle changes in her husband's routine. Invitations from the global elite poured in exclusive dinners with real estate mogul Mark Anderson, lunches at the Plaza with famed venture capitalist Lucy Goldstein, and hush-hush strategy sessions with foreign sovereign funds. While Alicia supported her husband's drive, she couldn't ignore the increasing cracks in his calendar or in his demeanor. He began coming home later, offering vague explanations about urgent meetings or unexpected negotiations. Alicia, ever understanding, reassured him that she respected his hustle. But then came the cancellations of their personal plans. A date to watch an off-Broadway show cancelled. A weekend getaway to the Hamptons postponed. Birthdays and family gatherings became second-tier priorities. The more she tried to reach him, the more she felt a certain emotional distance creeping in. Around the office, Jonathan was surrounded by loyalists and ladder climbers alike. One of them was David Lynn, his longtime friend from Harvard, and now partner at Cole Capital. David had witnessed Jonathan's evolution firsthand. He noticed subtle changes too: Jonathan's sharper edge during conference calls, the tension behind his charismatic smile during business pitches. Yet David trusted that a man as resourceful as Jonathan always had it under control. Among the staff at Cole Capital Ventures was also the bright and ambitious Veronica King. A recent Wharton MBA graduate, Veronica had made waves by closing a multi-million-dollar investment in green technology within her first year at the firm. Her intelligence and striking beauty made her a conversation piece at every corporate event. Jonathan lauded her as the future face of finance, praising her for deals that posted triple returns. He found in Veronica a reflection of his younger self, hungry, driven, and fearless. Still, none suspected that an alliance far different than business was about to form. At this point, Alicia had no idea who Veronica King truly was. She saw her name in passing on annual reports. Occasionally, Jonathan would mention Veronica's accomplishments, praising her for innovative thinking. Alicia would nod and smile, impressed by this rising star. In Alicia's mind, she was grateful Jonathan had formidable professionals like Veronica on his team. She never once suspected that the very power he admired in his protégé might be forging a dangerous temptation beneath their polished corporate veneer. As Alicia's pregnancy crept into her second trimester, she began noticing odd details. The first warning sign was a perfume scent she didn't recognize lingering on Jonathan's coat. She asked him about it casually, and he brushed it off, probably from a handshake at some networking event. Another red flag was how he protected his phone like a prized artifact, always face down, always locked with a new passcode. Late at night, she'd hear the faint buzz of messages, see the subtle glow of his screen as he typed back in the dark. Each time she tried to rationalize away her concerns. This was the man she loved, who donated millions to build libraries in underserved communities, who cried at the birth announcement, who once surprised her on a random Tuesday with her favorite pastries from her parents' bakery. Infidelity seemed unimaginable. Yet Alicia's heart churned with a subtle, gnawing dread. Life in the Cole penthouse had become increasingly solitary. Although Jonathan had promised to limit business travel during her pregnancy, his schedule remained as frenetic as ever. Singapore, Dubai, Paris. He was always on the go, chasing new mergers or expansions. He rarely spent more than a couple of nights at home. When he did, he was restless, glued to emails or brainstorming calls. Alicia began to feel that the only presence she could truly count on was the baby she carried. Friends from Alicia's old neighborhood in Queens reached out with concern. They missed her visits the way she used to pop in for coffee and conversation. He's just going through a busy phase, she'd reassure them. In a way, Alicia was trying to reassure herself too. Still, doubt grew every time she caught sight of that mysterious perfume, or saw a new bruise-like shadow under her husband's eyes from sleepless nights. Then Alicia found something chilling, a hotel receipt tucked in Jonathan's suitcase from a high-end resort in Turks and Caicos. The date overlapped with a weekend he'd told her he was in Boston, closing a deal. She tried to confront him, but lost her nerve. Could she have misunderstood? Was it a courtesy booking for a client or staff? Her mind ran in circles, seeking a plausible explanation. Little did she know the truth was far more insidious. Veronica King was not the sort of woman who blended into the background. With ebony hair styled in a sleek bob, she carried herself with confident ease. By day, she dazzled boardrooms with crisp financial analyses, commanding respect from colleagues twice her age. By night, she appeared in social columns alongside Manhattan's elite, her emerald dress shimmering under paparazzi flashes. She was rumored to have grown up in modest circumstances, determined to break ceilings, no matter the cost. One evening, Alicia found herself accompanying Jonathan to a charity gala, hosted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Proceeds would benefit underfunded art programs in public schools, an event that aligned perfectly with Alicia's passion. Upon arriving, Alicia felt the old sparkle of excitement hobnobbing with notable figures like gallery owners, educators, and philanthropic entrepreneurs. A group of Jonathan's colleagues from Cole Capital Ventures greeted them, among whom was Veronica. This was their first real introduction. "Ah, the legend herself," Veronica said, with a radiant smile, extending her hand to Alicia. "Jonathan speaks so highly of you, and all the wonderful work you do with school kids." Alicia returned the greeting, struck by Veronica's grace. She was everything Alicia imagined a high-flying finance star, to be polished, assertive, exuding an air of subtle power. When Alicia mentioned her involvement in drafting new arts curricula, Veronica listened attentively, nodding as though she truly cared. The conversation was pleasant, even warm. Yet Alicia caught a flicker of something unspoken between Veronica and Jonathan, a shared glance that felt too intimate, too layered with private meaning. Throughout the gala, Alicia couldn't shake the sense that eyes were on them, as if the rest of the guests sensed an undercurrent. She told herself she was imagining it, that she was just hormonal and overthinking, but a tiny voice inside her whispered, "Veronica King is more important to Jonathan than you realize." By the evening's end, Alicia felt unsettled. Jonathan excused himself to take a call just when Alicia was beginning to share her feelings about an educational campaign. Veronica also vanished into the throng of socialites. Alicia sipped her sparkling water in awkward solitude, noticing a faint swirl of that same unfamiliar perfume drifting through the air. After the gala, Alicia began piecing together subtle patterns. Jonathan had singled Veronica out in so many conversations, praising her as a strategic genius, marveling at her ability to close deals in weeks that took others months. In the past, Alicia had been proud whenever Jonathan mentored bright up-and-comers. Yet with Veronica, the tone of his praise sounded tinged with personal adoration. One morning, Alicia found herself with a free schedule and decided to surprise Jonathan at his office with homemade pastries, his favorite almond croissants from her parents' bakery. It was a gesture she used to do often, back when everything felt normal. Arriving unannounced, Alicia was greeted by the wide-eyed receptionist, who stumbled through a hello, as though not entirely sure how to handle her presence. She brushed it off and headed down the glass-walled corridor to Jonathan's corner office. Outside his door, Alicia froze. Through the partial opening, she heard lowered voices. Jonathan and Veronica seemed to be in the middle of a heated discussion, but not in an angry sense, more like an emotionally charged conversation. Alicia didn't want to eavesdrop, yet she couldn't will herself to move. Then she clearly heard Veronica say, "We'll figure this out, Jonathan. I'm not giving up on you." A brief silence followed, and then Jonathan's voice, softer. "I know. Just not here." Alicia's heart hammered in her chest. She quickly retraced her steps and waited by the reception area, forcing a casual expression when Veronica exited the office moments later. Veronica paused in surprise upon seeing Alicia with the pastry box. "Oh, hi. I didn't know you'd be stopping by." Her voice carried an undercurrent of tension, though her face remained impeccably calm. Alicia's fingers clenched around the box as she managed a tight smile. Their brief exchange ended with Veronica slipping away in a swirl of designer perfume. Alicia approached Jonathan's office next. He greeted her with mild surprise and a forced grin. "Almond croissants, wow," he said, accepting the box. His eyes flicked to the door as if confirming Veronica was gone. Alicia asked if he was all right, and Jonathan dismissed it as office stress. The entire moment felt like a carefully choreographed dance, with unspoken tensions swirling around them. That night, Alicia hardly slept, twisting the memory of Veronica's words over and over in her mind. "I'm not giving up on you." She remembered how intimate they sounded, like a promise between lovers rather than colleagues. Uncertainty blossomed, overshadowing even the joys of her pregnancy. She told herself she needed proof before leaping to conclusions that might destroy her marriage. Still, the seeds of suspicion had taken root, and the soil of her heart felt unbearably cold. Despite mounting worries, Alicia maintained her public smile as she accompanied Jonathan to another high-profile event, the annual City of Tomorrow Gala. Headlined by luminaries in real estate, tech, and philanthropy, it was a can't-miss affair for anyone jockeying for influence. Jonathan was especially eager to network with Tony McAllister, a legendary investor rumored to be launching a multi-billion-dollar fund. Alicia planned to share her vision for an educational project that integrated cutting-edge technology into underfunded schools, hoping to drum up philanthropic support. The venue was lavish, a 5-star hotel ballroom overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and violin music mingled with the hum of high-stakes conversation. Alicia wore a flowing cobalt gown, tailored to accommodate her growing baby bump. She felt both regal and uneasy, noting the stares from various acquaintances. She wondered if she was imagining the undertones of gossip in their voices when they greeted her. About an hour into the gala, Veronica King swept in, wearing a sequined emerald dress that seemed to catch every flicker of light. She joined Jonathan, who stood near a champagne fountain, exchanging pleasantries with Tony McAllister. Veronica's arrival sparked a shift in the air. Jonathan's posture straightened, and there was a palpable current of electricity as they spoke. Alicia approached, heart thudding. She joined the circle just in time to hear Jonathan praising Veronica. She single-handedly brought in an Indonesian sovereign fund for our latest project. Imagine what she'll do next year. Veronica laughed softly, thanking him, while shooting a quick, coded look in his direction. That fleeting glance felt like a secret confession. Tony McAllister then turned to Alicia, politely inquiring about her philanthropic interests. Seizing the opportunity, she shared her concept for bridging education gaps through advanced technology. Though Tony listened, Alicia sensed a general distraction in the group, as if her words were overshadowed by the silent drama swirling between Jonathan and Veronica. She pressed on regardless, determined to stand her ground. Partway through the evening, Alicia watched from across the ballroom as Jonathan and Veronica slipped out onto the balcony. Their silhouettes formed tense outlines in the moonlight. Alicia could almost feel the strain in their stances. When they returned, Jonathan was stone-faced, while Veronica looked tearful. The rest of the gala played out in a haze, Alicia's mind spinning with questions. Why was Jonathan risking such a public display if he truly had nothing to hide? On the ride home, Jonathan was silent. Alicia debated whether to confront him. Fear of the truth won out. She remained quiet, letting the hush fill the back seat like a suffocating blanket. One thing was certain: the veneer of their marriage was cracking fast. Weeks after the gala, Alicia woke one morning to a series of text messages from unknown numbers. Each one contained the same cryptic statement: "You deserve better. Check your emails." Shaken, she logged into her personal email account and found an anonymous note with an attachment. The note read, "He's not who you think he is. Trust me, I work with them. This has gone on too long. You should know." Hands trembling, Alicia opened the attachment. Her eyes widened at what she saw. Screenshots of phone call logs, countless late-night messages and photos from Veronica King, all addressed to Jonathan. Some were innocuous, referencing business deals, but others were clearly personal phrases like, "Missing you last night was unforgettable and can't wait until we're alone again," leaped off the screen. A wave of shock crashed over Alicia. She felt like she was floating outside her body, watching herself shatter. She reread the messages, searching for any plausible explanation besides the obvious. Perhaps they were fabricated, or maybe there was some context missing. Yet the depth and frequency of the conversations were undeniable. Jonathan had been carrying on a secret affair with Veronica, and someone inside Cole Capital or close to them had decided to expose it. Through her tears, Alicia tried to remain rational. She recognized some of the timestamps. They aligned perfectly with nights Jonathan claimed to be overseas or tied up in emergency meetings. Worse, there were photos of the two at a private beach, Veronica in a sun hat, Jonathan leaning into her with a tenderness Alicia once believed was reserved only for their marriage. The date stamps matched the weekend he was supposedly in Boston. Alicia doubled over as waves of nausea seized her, uncertain if it was morning sickness or heartbreak. She clutched her phone, tears splashing onto the screen. The anonymous tip had obliterated any chance of maintaining her illusions. Betrayal now stood naked before her, leaving no room for doubt. She scrolled through the messages again, feeling her grief transform into rage. She was pregnant with this man's child, while he gallivanted with another woman behind her back. Was this what their marriage was worth? In desperation, Alicia tried calling Jonathan. No answer. She left a trembling voice message. "We need to talk. Now." Then she buried her face in a pillow, sobbing until exhaustion closed her eyes. The world felt cruel, and she wondered if she had the strength to confront what came next. Jonathan returned home late that evening to find Alicia sitting on the living room couch, the glow of a single lamp illuminating her tear-streaked face. The instant he saw her reddened eyes, he knew something had changed. She said nothing at first, only holding out her phone. He glanced at the screen and visibly paled. Silent seconds stretched as he read through the texts and pictures. Alicia noticed the flicker of guilt crossing his face before he masked it with a forced calmness. "Where did you get these?" he asked, voice low. "Does it matter?" she replied. "They're real, aren't they?" He exhaled shakily, dropping into a seat across from her. "It's complicated. Veronica and I don't want excuses." Alicia's voice trembled with quiet fury. "I want to know how you could do this while I'm pregnant with your child." Jonathan looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "It started as a mistake, Alicia. I was at a conference, we had too much to drink." "That's not an excuse," she snapped. "You lied to me for months." "No years, given these time stamps. You made me doubt my own sanity." He tried to speak, but the words choked in his throat. Instead, tears brimmed in his eyes. Alicia found it almost pitiful. She had once adored this man, who seemed larger than life. Now he looked small, lost, and pathetic, snared in the aftermath of his own betrayal. Eventually, he confessed to an ongoing affair with Veronica. They had grown close while working on high-stakes deals. Their relationship escalated during out-of-town conferences, fueled by adrenaline and the thrill of secrecy. Jonathan insisted it was never about love, but about tension relief and escaping the pressures he faced at Cole Capital. His rationale shattered the last vestiges of Alicia's sympathy. She pointed to her baby bump. "What about me? Your child. Did you ever think about the risk emotionally? Physically?" Jonathan attempted an apology, but the words felt hollow. Alicia erupted pent-up fury, spilling out in a storm of accusations. She recounted every suspicious sign she'd overlooked, how she'd supported his career, how she had endured him missing prenatal appointments. Underneath her anger lay a deep sadness for the life she thought they were building, a life that Jonathan had so casually betrayed. By the time the confrontation ended, Alicia felt emotionally gutted. Jonathan slept in his study that night, if he slept at all. She stared at her bedroom ceiling, tears soaking her pillow, wrestling with how to move forward. The next morning, she awakened to the knowledge that her heartbreak was only beginning, and so was Jonathan's downfall. In the days following Alicia's discovery, Jonathan scrambled to patch up his personal and professional worlds. He promised Veronica he would handle the situation, but that Alicia would always be his priority. He reassured Alicia that he would end the affair immediately, that he would do whatever it took to save their marriage. However, Alicia watched his panic with an air of detachment. Her trust in him was already shattered. Then came the social media explosion. One Monday morning, a popular finance gossip blog, The Street Whisperer, posted a scathing article, "Billionaire Jonathan Cole's Secret Affair, Exposed Exclusive Photos." The piece included leaked pictures of Jonathan and Veronica, embracing in what appeared to be a private cabana at a tropical resort. The blog teased additional salacious details forthcoming. Within hours, major business news outlets like Bloomberg and CNBC picked up the story, albeit more cautiously. They framed it as a scandal-rocking coal capital ventures. Stock forums buzzed with speculation about how this might affect Jonathan's leadership and the firm's reputation. On Twitter, finance influencers dissected the ethical implications, with some calling for Jonathan to step down. Jonathan's phone lit up with calls from board members, investors, and perplexed clients. Even Lucy Goldstein, who had once praised him for philanthropic endeavors, publicly condemned his distraction from the greater mission of ethical business. The timing was disastrous. He had been on the cusp of finalizing a massive investment partnership with Tony McAllister. Now everything was in jeopardy. Alicia, reading the news coverage with weary eyes, felt a surge of anger. She had never wanted a public scandal. She would have preferred a private reckoning. But now that the world knew, she felt oddly vindicated. No longer was she alone in suspecting Jonathan's duplicity. Everyone saw it. Even so, she worried about the toll this uproar might exact on her unborn child. Less than 24 hours later, a video surfaced of Jonathan and Veronica walking hand in hand through a hotel lobby in Paris, laughing as though they didn't have a care in the world. The date stamp revealed it was just 2 months prior, around the same time Alicia had told him about her pregnancy. Public outrage soared and investors panicked. Jonathan's carefully curated brand, self-made entrepreneur, philanthropic benefactor, devoted husband, was crumbling under a relentless digital onslaught. In the midst of the uproar, Alicia received a second anonymous email. This time it contained receipts of hush money, transfers from Jonathan's personal account to an offshore entity with references to Veronica's name. The sender wrote, "He's been paying to keep certain things quiet. Thought you should know." Alicia's heart pounded as she examined the evidence. It looked like Jonathan had been funneling funds, possibly to secure Veronica's silence or cooperation. The sum was staggering enough to fund a dozen scholarships or a new arts program in any given school. The revelation further corroded Alicia's hope that Jonathan could ever be the man she once believed him to be. She confronted him the following evening, brandishing printouts of the transactions. "You're bribing her now. Is this blackmail?" "Hush money." "What else have you been hiding?" Jonathan, cornered, admitted. He'd been trying to preempt any public scandal, fearing precisely what was happening now. Veronica wanted compensation for her efforts on certain deals, he claimed. She threatened to go to the competition, or worse, to the media. "I had to protect our company, our name." "Is this your idea of protection?" Alicia spat tears stinging her eyes. "Lying, paying people off, it's disgusting. You betrayed me, betrayed your own ethics if you ever had them." Jonathan's face twisted. "Don't say that. I messed up. But everything I did was to protect us, to keep the family intact." Alicia laughed bitterly, clutching her pregnant belly. "And how's that working out for you? The world knows now. You might lose everything. And me. I don't know if there's any us left to protect." She stormed out, leaving Jonathan staring at the damning documents. On the street, Alicia's mind whirled. She felt trapped, tied by marriage, soon to be tied by parenthood, yet confronted with the ultimate betrayal. The outside world offered no solace, either its eyes fixated on the spectacle of Jonathan's downfall. For a moment she wondered if leaving the city altogether would be the only way to save her sanity. But deep in her heart, Alicia knew she had to stand and face the storm, if not for herself, then for the child growing inside her. Within a week, Jonathan's scandal dominated the business news cycle. Forbes ran an op-ed titled "The Tragic Fall of Finance's Golden Boy," analyzing how personal irresponsibility could sink even the most profitable venture. Share prices for coal capital ventures nosedived, rattling the firm's board of directors and raising alarms among major investors. Social media took an especially brutal stance. Under the hashtag #CoalCollapse, thousands commented on Jonathan's hypocrisy, calling him a poster child for toxic corporate culture. Alicia's name also trended, though more sympathetically. Strangers on the internet expressed solidarity for a pregnant wife betrayed on a global stage. Some urged her to take him for all he's worth, while others championed her as a potential advocate for women wronged by powerful men. Within Coal Capital's walls, tension soared. The workforce split into factions. Some remained loyal to Jonathan, believing the scandal was a personal matter that shouldn't overshadow his accomplishments. Others blamed him for tarnishing the company's name, an act of negligence that jeopardized everyone's jobs. David Lynn tried to calm internal chaos, but rumors circulated that half the board wanted Jonathan removed. Veronica, for her part, took a leave of absence, claiming stress from the public harassment. No one knew if she'd be back. Amid the chaos, Alicia found herself hounded by reporters camped outside the penthouse, cameras and microphones at the ready. She refused to answer questions or open the door, feeling the walls close in on her. Her phone buzzed with calls from tabloids, offering huge sums for an exclusive interview. She declined them all. Journalists even visited her parents' bakery, peppering them with invasive questions. Her mother, Lucia, called Alicia in tears, apologizing for not knowing what to do. Alicia felt a wave of guilt. Her private tragedy had become a public spectacle, and those she loved were collateral damage. Deep inside, a new resolve formed. Alicia realized she had the power to shape her own narrative, rather than let the scandal swirl around her uncontested. She was the wronged party, she had a voice, and if she spoke, the world would listen. Whether that voice would bring healing or further destruction, she didn't yet know. But she was done sitting quietly, while Jonathan's duplicity overshadowed her entire life. During one sleepless night, Alicia stared at old photos on her phone. Her and Jonathan beaming at their wedding, her reading to children at the community center, him unveiling a giant check for a local library. The happy memories contrasted so sharply with the heartbreak she now endured. She felt betrayed not just by Jonathan, but by the entire facade of perfection they once presented. At some point, she scrolled through messages of support from friends, even strangers on social media. People urged her to fight to stand up for herself and her unborn baby. She mulled over the idea of making a public statement, something to reclaim her dignity, but also to call out Jonathan's actions without stooping to sensationalism. Her phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for what you're going through. If you need a platform to share your side, we have your back." Signed, Anna Brooks, women's advocate today. Alicia recognized the name Anna Brooks as a well-known journalist and feminist advocate. Anna's open letters had previously brought attention to issues like wage gaps and domestic abuse. The text felt genuine, a rare sign of compassion in a media landscape that often thrived on sensationalism. Alicia's heart pounded. Could she trust Anna to handle her story ethically? The next morning, Alicia called Anna. Their conversation lasted almost an hour. Anna listened without interruption as Alicia spoke of her heartbreak, her isolation, and her fears for her future. She clarified that her aim wasn't to harm Jonathan's career out of spite, but to stand up for her own life and child. Anna offered to arrange a press conference, a controlled environment, where Alicia could present her perspective. No tabloid spin, no paparazzi ambush. Alicia agreed, though the decision left her trembling with anticipation and dread. That afternoon, Alicia met with a lawyer who specialized in marital law. She wanted to understand her rights, especially with a baby on the way. While part of her considered divorce, another part still grappled with the love she'd once felt for Jonathan. The lawyer recommended caution, explaining how a public statement might influence settlement negotiations or custody issues. Alicia nodded gravely, fully aware that once she spoke publicly, there would be no going back. In just a few days, Anna Brooks secured a small event space in Midtown, not far from Times Square. The press invite was circulated discreetly among reputable journalists and media outlets. The announcement was simple: Alicia Cole, wife of Jonathan Cole, to make a statement regarding recent events. Despite the short notice, the event attracted major attention. Producers from major networks like CNN, MSNBC, and even BBC reached out, eager to broadcast the story of a betrayed wife taking a stand against her millionaire husband. Anna Brooks handled logistics, ensuring Alicia would have privacy to arrive and depart without being mobbed by cameras. In the background, Alicia's lawyer hovered, uneasy about how the press conference might affect legal proceedings. Still, Alicia was resolute. This was her narrative to tell. On the eve of the press conference, Alicia worked on her statement in a quiet corner of her parents' bakery, inhaling the comforting scent of fresh bread. Her mother brought her a warm mug of chamomile tea, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "You'll do what's right," Lucia whispered, eyes filled with motherly concern. Alicia's phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "Please don't do this. We can fix it privately. Think of our child." She stared at the words, bitterness surging. She typed back, "It's too late for that. You should have thought of our child before you betrayed us." Then she turned off her phone, refocusing on the words she planned to read before the world. Inside her, a swirl of emotions raged: heartbreak, anger, but also an underlying sense of empowerment. She was no longer the supportive wife in the background of Jonathan's success story. She was stepping forward, pregnant and wounded, but ready to claim her truth. Whatever happened next, she promised herself she would be honest, not just for herself, but for all the women who had reached out, telling her to be strong. A brisk wind blew through Manhattan on the morning of Alicia's press conference. Cameras were already set up by the time she arrived, escorted by Anna Brooks. The modest venue could seat about 100 reporters, but more were spilling out the door, forming a crowd on the sidewalk. A hush fell as Alicia stepped onto the small stage, her baby bump subtly outlined beneath a black wrap dress. Anna stood beside her like a protective shield. Flashes lit the room. Alicia took a deep breath, heart pounding so loudly she feared the microphone would pick it up. She glanced at her note cards, then at the sea of expectant faces. She began, voice trembling at first. "Good morning. My name is Alicia Cole, and I'm here to speak about the scandal involving my husband, Jonathan Cole, and his affair with Veronica King. For weeks now, I've watched as this story has been told by tabloids, blogs, and the rumor mill. Today, I want to present the truth from my perspective." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I have been married to Jonathan for 3 years, and we are expecting a child. I believed in him, stood by him, built a life with him. But I recently discovered, along with the rest of the world, that he was engaged in an extramarital relationship. I have read the same articles, seen the same images. They are devastating, especially given my pregnancy." Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every flicker of emotion on her face. Alicia continued, her voice growing steadier. "I do not share this to invite pity or to be a pawn in a public spectacle. I share it because women mothers deserve the truth when it comes to the integrity of the men we marry. And because I believe accountability matters, whether you're a private individual or a public figure who touts ethical leadership. She then revealed Jonathan's attempts to cover up the affair, even referencing hush money documents. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Alicia clarified, "I stand here not to destroy Jonathan Cole, but to claim my future and the future of my child free from deception. I believe marriage is a partnership built on trust, and once that trust is broken so thoroughly, we must face the reality of what remains." With tears brimming, Alicia concluded, "I'm asking for privacy and respect as I decide the next steps for my family. I'm grateful for the outpouring of support. My hope is that by speaking my truth, I can begin healing and perhaps encourage others facing similar betrayal to do the same." She stepped back from the podium, a trembling hush sweeping the room. Cameras zoomed in on her tear-streaked face as Anna guided her away. The press conference had lasted less than 10 minutes, but it was enough to ignite a media firestorm that would shake Jonathan Cole's empire to its core. The press conference footage went viral within hours, dominating TV headlines and flooding social media timelines. Clips of Alicia's trembling yet resolute voice played on a loop. Hashtags like #AliciaCole and #TruthFor.Women trended globally. Celebrity talk show hosts weighed in praising her bravery. Prominent women's advocacy groups hailed Alicia as a hero for publicly confronting the betrayal. Jonathan Cole, meanwhile, faced an immediate backlash. Investors who had hesitated to sever ties earlier now flocked away from Cole Capital Ventures in droves, unwilling to align themselves with a leader so publicly indicted by his own wife. The firm's stock plummeted further. A joint venture with Tony McAllister was placed on indefinite hold. In a statement to the press, Tony cited concerns about leadership ethics and stability. Inside Cole Capital, the board of directors convened an emergency meeting. The consensus was grim. Jonathan's personal scandal had become a public relations nightmare. A formal vote of no confidence was scheduled for the following week to decide his future at the company he'd built from scratch. Some long-time allies still defended him, claiming that personal issues shouldn't overshadow professional achievements, but they were outnumbered by those pointing to the spiraling finances and brand damage. Jonathan retreated to the penthouse blinds drawn, refusing to comment publicly. Even Veronica King was nowhere to be found, rumored to be on an extended stay in London. For Alicia, the whirlwind of support and media attention felt surreal. Every time she logged online, she saw strangers praising her courage, dissecting her press conference, or labeling Jonathan a monster. She had never wanted to be the face of a movement, but she felt a growing sense of responsibility to use the platform fate had handed her. In private, she grappled with heartbreak and anxiety about the future. She had awakened in a gilded cage, her wealthy lifestyle now overshadowed by betrayal. Yet the press conference had sparked something new, a sense of agency. For the first time since discovering Jonathan's affair, she could breathe freely, certain she was controlling her own path. And that path would soon demand another step, deciding whether to stay in the marriage or proceed with a legal separation. At Cole Capital Ventures, the board of directors convened the crucial vote. The meeting room had never felt so tense. David Lynn sat at one end of the table, his face grim. Over half the chairs were occupied by men and women who once revered Jonathan as a visionary. Now they stared at financial projections, plummeting into the red, accompanied by slideshow images of negative media headlines referencing the Cole scandal. The intangible toll, public distrust, moral outrage, was just as damaging. Jonathan, face pale and eyes rimmed with exhaustion, delivered a desperate plea. He promised to rectify the situation, citing therapy crisis management strategies and a vow to refocus on the firm's core mission. "I've made mistakes," he admitted hoarsely. "But our track record of delivering value can't be overlooked. We are bigger than one scandal. We can still thrive if we stay united." Some board members shifted uncomfortably. A few, including David Lynn, tried to salvage the conversation, arguing for a temporary leave of absence instead of outright dismissal. But the majority believed drastic action was required to restore credibility. A hush blanketed the room as the members cast their anonymous votes. When the tallies were read, the verdict was clear. Jonathan Cole was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Tremors of shock rippled through the halls. Cole Capital employees, once starry-eyed by Jonathan's leadership, watched him clear his office with a mix of pity and muted anger. A caretaker CEO was appointed to stabilize the ship, focusing on damage control. David Lynn glanced at Jonathan with a sorrowful expression as security escorted him out. "I'm sorry, man," David whispered. "I tried to fight for you." Jonathan nodded wordlessly, clutching a box of personal belongings. By evening, business publications around the world proclaimed Cole Capital ousts founder amid scandal. Jonathan's reign was officially over. The man who once soared across the financial stratosphere was now unemployed, disgraced, and teetering on the edge of complete ruin. Jonathan's life unspooled in disarray. With no office to report to, he holed up in the penthouse, ignoring calls from journalists. He occasionally ventured out in sunglasses and a baseball cap, only to be ambushed by paparazzi. Online comments labeled him a cautionary tale of greed and infidelity. Some articles even suggested the affair had been an open secret among New York's finance circles, fueling new levels of scrutiny. Personal finances also took a hit. Jonathan's sudden exit from Cole Capital triggered contractual penalties. He faced possible breach of contract lawsuits tied to deals he'd spearheaded but failed to close. Frozen lines of credit cancelled invitations to VIP events. His social and financial power dwindled. Amid his downward spiral, Jonathan tried repeatedly to contact Alicia, leaving voicemails and handwritten notes. He apologized profusely, claiming he was ready to do anything to salvage their relationship. "I'll go to counseling, sign post-nups. Anything you want. One note. Red." But Alicia remained resolute, focusing instead on her own well-being and that of her unborn child. The final blow came when Alicia's press conference was replayed in a prime-time special with a commentary panel dissecting Jonathan's betrayal. The segment ended with a heartfelt interview of Alicia by Anna Brooks, highlighting Alicia's philanthropic ambitions. Footage showed Alicia visiting an after-school program, receiving cheers from children who recognized her from news coverage. In that moment, the camera panned to Alicia's determined face, capturing her transformation from betrayed spouse to empowered advocate. Jonathan watched the segment alone, a half-finished bottle of scotch by his side. He saw how the public now regarded Alicia with admiration, a stark contrast to his own vilification. In a moment of clarity, he realized he was witnessing the rise of a woman who had once stood quietly beside him, someone he'd taken for granted. Shattered by regret, he continued drinking until the lights of the penthouse blurred into darkness. While Jonathan sank deeper, Alicia was busy forging a new path. Through Anna Brooks's media connections and her own philanthropic background, she organized a fundraiser for underprivileged schools. The event was set to be a smaller, more authentic affair, than the high-gloss galas Jonathan once frequented. The proceeds would go toward bridging the digital divide in low-income neighborhoods, an initiative Alicia had championed long before the scandal. As the date approached, Alicia found herself gaining supporters from unexpected places. Tony McAllister, once interested in partnering with Jonathan, reached out privately. He expressed admiration for Alicia's courage and inquired if she'd accept a donation from his philanthropic foundation. She graciously agreed, grateful for the unwavering backing. Others in the business world, previously enthralled by Jonathan, now saw Alicia as an emerging figure with moral authority. Invitations to speak at leadership panels trickled in ironically, offering her the spotlight once promised to her husband. Meanwhile, Alicia took steps to secure her future. Working with a lawyer, she prepared for a potential divorce filing. She also met with a financial advisor, ensuring she understood the complexities of Jonathan's assets and any marital entitlements. Each step felt daunting, yet liberating, as she realized she no longer had to abide by the illusions of a perfect marriage. In a surprising twist, David Lynn approached Alicia discreetly. He apologized on behalf of Cole Capital, acknowledging that many within the firm admired her. "We know Jonathan's downfall was his own doing," David admitted. "We'd like to work with you in some capacity, maybe an advisory role on the philanthropic side." Alicia hesitated, uncertain about maintaining ties to an institution so entangled with Jonathan's betrayal. Still, she considered the possibility of effecting positive change from within. Days turned into weeks as Alicia balanced philanthropic planning, potential legal battles, and the emotional toll of pregnancy. Through it all, she maintained her composure, fueled by a sense of purpose. While part of her still grieved the betrayal, she also recognized a budding strength. Her identity was no longer solely Mrs. Jonathan Cole. She was Alicia Cole, a force in her own right. One brisk afternoon, as Alicia returned to her parents' bakery for a quiet meeting with donors, she found Jonathan waiting near the doorway, slumped against a lamppost. He appeared disheveled, unshaven eyes bloodshot, wearing a crumpled blazer. The sight startled her, stirring both pity and residual anger. "Please," he said, voice strained. "Just a moment of your time." She considered walking past him, but compassion nudged her to pause. She let him follow her inside, where they settled at a back table amid the comforting aroma of fresh pastries. Lucia glanced over worriedly from the counter, but respected her daughter's privacy. Jonathan exhaled shakily. "I've lost everything, my job, my reputation. I can't lose you too. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging you to give me another chance." Alicia felt tears prick her eyes, though she kept her composure. "Another chance to do what? You've lied to me, cheated on me, humiliated me publicly." He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. "I know. I was an idiot. I was greedy, arrogant. The money, the power, it consumed me. Veronica was just a symptom of my own weaknesses." "That doesn't erase what you did," Alicia murmured. "It doesn't take back the night you were with her, while I lay at home, excited to share baby news with you. It doesn't undo all the heartbreak." Jonathan lowered his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. Alicia recognized genuine remorse in his eyes, but she also knew it might be too late. "If you need me to sign anything," he whispered, "custody agreements, child support, I'll do it. I just want to be part of the baby's life." The request struck a chord deep within Alicia. Their child deserved a father, but was Jonathan capable of the responsibility? She wrestled with conflicting emotions, the memory of happier times, and the fresh sting of betrayal. Finally, she said, "I can't make that decision right now. I need time. But this much is clear. You have to deal with the consequences of what you've done on your own." Jonathan nodded, head bowed in defeat. Before leaving, he offered a small envelope. "In case you want to reach me. That's my new number." Then he slipped out into the cold afternoon, a broken man still clinging to a shred of hope. In the following weeks, Alicia immersed herself in planning her fundraiser, channeling her emotions into a cause that symbolized new beginnings. The event space was modest, a converted art gallery in Brooklyn, yet the atmosphere radiated warmth. Donors included local business owners, educators, and some philanthropic heavyweights. Alicia opened the evening by sharing her own story, not focusing on the scandal, but on the importance of forging a brighter future for the next generation. The fundraiser turned into a soaring success, raising more funds than Alicia had anticipated. Attendees praised her vision, and media coverage highlighted her commitment to positive change, contrasting starkly with Jonathan's tarnished reputation. Standing at the podium, Alicia felt a rush of empowerment. As she thanked the crowd, her hand drifted to her baby bump. She realized that in building a better world for others, she was also building a better world for her child. Not long after Alicia filed for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences. The move was symbolic as much as legal, a declaration that she was no longer tethered to Jonathan's fate. Public interest in the scandal waned, replaced by fresh headlines as the news cycle moved on. Life was still challenging, but Alicia awoke each morning with a renewed sense of purpose, surrounded by supportive friends and family. As for Jonathan, rumors suggested he had entered therapy and was considering launching a smaller financial consultancy if he could find backers. Some whispered that he was volunteering at a youth center, seeking to rediscover the philanthropic spark that once defined him. Whether these rumors were genuine or just strategic, Alicia didn't know. Occasionally, she thought about letting him be involved with the child, but she needed reassurance that he had truly changed. Alicia's belly grew, and so did her resolve. She had discovered her voice in the midst of betrayal, learning that her worth wasn't measured by a man's success or the illusions they spun together. The conclusion of this saga was not a bitter end, but rather the blossoming of her independence. She carried with her the lessons of heartbreak, the joy of impending motherhood, and a determination to rise above any scandal that dared to overshadow her future. The downfall of Jonathan Cole and the rise of Alicia Cole stand as a testament to life's unpredictable turns. A single leak online dragged a powerhouse billionaire into ruin, yet it also became a spark for his pregnant wife to find her voice, her mission, and her freedom. Betrayal can devastate, but it can also illuminate truths we've long buried. Alicia transformed her heartbreak into a crusade for better opportunities, showing that even in the darkest moments, we have the power to rebuild and sometimes shine brighter than ever before. If this story moved, you don't let it end here. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama and compelling narratives. Your support helps us continue bringing stories of resilience, empowerment, and the triumph of the human spirit. Stay tuned for our next riveting tale, because when one door closes, another door swings open, often revealing a whole new world of possibilities. Meanwhile, Alicia Cole, his pregnant wife, began to sense the cracks in her gilded cage. No one, least of all Jonathan, suspected how quickly a single online leak would unravel his carefully manicured world, ending his career in the span of one unforgettable night. Jonathan Cole's story was the stuff of modern legend. Born to middle-class parents in suburban New Jersey, he had clawed his way to a scholarship at Harvard Business School. There he'd rubbed shoulders with future magnates, forging alliances that would later propel him to the top of the finance world. By age 32, Jonathan had founded Cole Capital Ventures, a private equity firm that specialized in distressed real estate assets, buying low, selling high, and weaving magic in between. His good looks and suave charm made him a darling of the business press. Forbes ran a feature titled Young Titan, Jonathan Cole's meteoric rise, capturing him in a tailored navy suit against the panoramic backdrop of New York City. In the interview, he praised mentors such as Warren Buffett for teaching him patience and Bill Gates for demonstrating philanthropy on a global scale. The crowning moment, though, was his picture-shaking hands with Elon Musk after a speculative investment in aerospace startups. Jonathan glowed with the certainty that he was destined for greatness. It was at a fundraiser in Central Park that he first met Alicia Martinez. She was a non-profit consultant with a passion for arts education. Where Jonathan's approach to conversation was slick and polished, Alicia's was empathetic and earnest. He found her refusal to be dazzled by his reputation oddly refreshing. She was there to talk about underfunded public schools, not hedge funds or leveraged buyouts. By the end of that charity walk, Jonathan had her phone number, and she had a curious spark in her heart. In 2 short years, they were married. Alicia's parents, humble owners of a small bakery in Queens, couldn't believe their daughter was wedding a man so frequently mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. But to Alicia, Jonathan wasn't simply the millionaire. He was the person who showed up unannounced to volunteer at her community events, who wrote personal checks for after-school programs. Their wedding ceremony, held at a historic mansion overlooking the Hudson River, was a glamorous yet heartfelt affair. The tabloids brimmed with gushing coverage, Alicia radiant in lace, Jonathan dashing in a classic tuxedo, smiling as though they had discovered the secret to eternal happiness. At first, their union genuinely seemed magical. Jonathan declared that Alicia grounded him, tethered him to values he might have otherwise forgotten. She brought soul to his ambition. Life in the Cole penthouse sparkled with promise, lavish soirees for global dignitaries, altruistic ventures to build schools in underprivileged neighborhoods, and daily bursts of joy that only 2 people deeply in love could share. If only that bliss could have lasted. Life moved quickly in Jonathan's orbit. The success of Cole Capital Ventures brought new deals, new acquaintances, and inevitably new pressures. Over time, Alicia witnessed the subtle changes in her husband's routine. Invitations from the global elite poured in exclusive dinners with real estate mogul Mark Anderson, lunches at the Plaza with famed venture capitalist Lucy Goldstein, and hush-hush strategy sessions with foreign sovereign funds. While Alicia supported her husband's drive, she couldn't ignore the increasing cracks in his calendar or in his demeanor. He began coming home later, offering vague explanations about urgent meetings or unexpected negotiations. Alicia, ever understanding, reassured him that she respected his hustle. But then came the cancellations of their personal plans. A date to watch an off-Broadway show cancelled. A weekend getaway to the Hamptons postponed. Birthdays and family gatherings became second-tier priorities. The more she tried to reach him, the more she felt a certain emotional distance creeping in. Around the office, Jonathan was surrounded by loyalists and ladder climbers alike. One of them was David Lynn, his longtime friend from Harvard, and now partner at Cole Capital. David had witnessed Jonathan's evolution firsthand. He noticed subtle changes too, Jonathan's sharper edge during conference calls, the tension behind his charismatic smile during business pitches. Yet David trusted that a man as resourceful as Jonathan always had it under control. Among the staff at Cole Capital Ventures was also the bright and ambitious Veronica King. A recent Wharton MBA graduate, Veronica had made waves by closing a multi-million-dollar investment in green technology within her first year at the firm. Her intelligence and striking beauty made her a conversation piece at every corporate event. Jonathan lauded her as the future face of finance, praising her for deals that posted triple returns. He found in Veronica a reflection of his younger self, hungry, driven, and fearless. Still none suspected that an alliance far different than business was about to form. At this point, Alicia had no idea who Veronica King truly was. She saw her name in passing on annual reports. Occasionally, Jonathan would mention Veronica's accomplishments, praising her for innovative thinking. Alicia would nod and smile, impressed by this rising star. In Alicia's mind, she was grateful Jonathan had formidable professionals like Veronica on his team. She never once suspected that the very power he admired in his protégé might be forging a dangerous temptation beneath their polished corporate veneer. As Alicia's pregnancy crept into her second trimester, she began noticing odd details. The first warning sign was a perfume scent she didn't recognize lingering on Jonathan's coat. She asked him about it casually, and he brushed it off, probably from a handshake at some networking event. Another red flag was how he protected his phone like a prized artifact, always face down, always locked with a new passcode. Late at night, she'd hear the faint buzz of messages, see the subtle glow of his screen as he typed back in the dark. Each time, she tried to rationalize away her concerns. This was the man she loved, who donated millions to build libraries in underserved communities, who cried at the birth announcement, who once surprised her on a random Tuesday with her favorite pastries from her parents' bakery. Infidelity seemed unimaginable. Yet Alicia's heart churned with a subtle, gnawing dread. Life in the Cole penthouse had become increasingly solitary. Although Jonathan had promised to limit business travel during her pregnancy, his schedule remained as frenetic as ever. Singapore, Dubai, Paris. He was always on the go, chasing new mergers or expansions. He rarely spent more than a couple of nights at home. When he did, he was restless, glued to emails or brainstorming calls. Alicia began to feel that the only presence she could truly count on was the baby she carried. Friends from Alicia's old neighborhood in Queens reached out with concern. They missed her visits the way she used to pop in for coffee and conversation. He's just going through a busy phase, she'd reassure them. In a way, Alicia was trying to reassure herself too. Still, doubt grew every time she caught sight of that mysterious perfume, or saw a new bruise-like shadow under her husband's eyes from sleepless nights. Then Alicia found something chilling, a hotel receipt tucked in Jonathan's suitcase from a high-end resort in Turks and Caicos. The date overlapped with a weekend he'd told her he was in Boston, closing a deal. She tried to confront him, but lost her nerve. Could she have misunderstood? Was it a courtesy booking for a client or staff? Her mind ran in circles, seeking a plausible explanation. Little did she know the truth was far more insidious. Veronica King was not the sort of woman who blended into the background. With ebony hair styled in a sleek bob, she carried herself with confident ease. By day, she dazzled boardrooms with crisp financial analyses, commanding respect from colleagues twice her age. By night, she appeared in social columns alongside Manhattan's elite, her emerald dress shimmering under paparazzi flashes. She was rumored to have grown up in modest circumstances, determined to break ceilings, no matter the cost. One evening, Alicia found herself accompanying Jonathan to a charity gala, hosted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Proceeds would benefit underfunded art programs in public schools, an event that aligned perfectly with Alicia's passion. Upon arriving, Alicia felt the old sparkle of excitement hobnobbing with notable figures like gallery owners, educators, and philanthropic entrepreneurs. A group of Jonathan's colleagues from Cole Capital Ventures greeted them, among whom was Veronica. This was their first real introduction. "Ah, the legend herself," Veronica said, with a radiant smile, extending her hand to Alicia. "Jonathan speaks so highly of you, and all the wonderful work you do with school kids." Alicia returned the greeting, struck by Veronica's grace. She was everything Alicia imagined a high-flying finance star, to be polished, assertive, exuding an air of subtle power. When Alicia mentioned her involvement in drafting new arts curricula, Veronica listened attentively, nodding as though she truly cared. The conversation was pleasant, even warm. Yet Alicia caught a flicker of something unspoken between Veronica and Jonathan, a shared glance that felt too intimate, too layered with private meaning. Throughout the gala, Alicia couldn't shake the sense that eyes were on them, as if the rest of the guests sensed an undercurrent. She told herself she was imagining it, that she was just hormonal and overthinking, but a tiny voice inside her whispered, "Veronica King is more important to Jonathan than you realize." By the evening's end, Alicia felt unsettled. Jonathan excused himself to take a call, just when Alicia was beginning to share her feelings about an educational campaign. Veronica also vanished into the throng of socialites. Alicia sipped her sparkling water in awkward solitude, noticing a faint swirl of that same unfamiliar perfume drifting through the air. After the gala, Alicia began piecing together subtle patterns. Jonathan had singled Veronica out in so many conversations, praising her as a strategic genius, marveling at her ability to close deals in weeks that took others months. In the past, Alicia had been proud whenever Jonathan mentored bright up-and-comers. Yet with Veronica, the tone of his praise sounded tinged with personal adoration. One morning, Alicia found herself with a free schedule and decided to surprise Jonathan at his office with homemade pastries, his favorite almond croissants from her parents' bakery. It was a gesture she used to do often, back when everything felt normal. Arriving unannounced, Alicia was greeted by the wide-eyed receptionist, who stumbled through a hello, as though not entirely sure how to handle her presence. She brushed it off and headed down the glass-walled corridor to Jonathan's corner office. Outside his door, Alicia froze. Through the partial opening, she heard lowered voices. Jonathan and Veronica seemed to be in the middle of a heated discussion, but not in an angry sense, more like an emotionally charged conversation. Alicia didn't want to eavesdrop, yet she couldn't will herself to move. Then she clearly heard Veronica say, "We'll figure this out, Jonathan. I'm not giving up on you." A brief silence followed, and then Jonathan's voice, softer. "I know. Just not here." Alicia's heart hammered in her chest. She quickly retraced her steps and waited by the reception area, forcing a casual expression when Veronica exited the office moments later. Veronica paused in surprise upon seeing Alicia with the pastry box. "Oh, hi. I didn't know you'd be stopping by." Her voice carried an undercurrent of tension, though her face remained impeccably calm. Alicia's fingers clenched around the box as she managed a tight smile. Their brief exchange ended with Veronica slipping away in a swirl of designer perfume. Alicia approached Jonathan's office next. He greeted her with mild surprise and a forced grin. "Almond croissants, wow," he said, accepting the box. His eyes flicked to the door, as if confirming Veronica was gone. Alicia asked if he was all right, and Jonathan dismissed it as office stress. The entire moment felt like a carefully choreographed dance, with unspoken tensions swirling around them. That night, Alicia hardly slept, twisting the memory of Veronica's words over and over in her mind. "I'm not giving up on you." She remembered how intimate they sounded, like a promise between lovers rather than colleagues. Uncertainty blossomed, overshadowing even the joys of her pregnancy. She told herself she needed proof before leaping to conclusions that might destroy her marriage. Still, the seeds of suspicion had taken root, and the soil of her heart felt unbearably cold. Despite mounting worries, Alicia maintained her public smile as she accompanied Jonathan to another high-profile event, the annual City of Tomorrow Gala. Headlined by luminaries in real estate, tech, and philanthropy, it was a can't-miss affair for anyone jockeying for influence. Jonathan was especially eager to network with Tony McAllister, a legendary investor rumored to be launching a multi-billion-dollar fund. Alicia planned to share her vision for an educational project that integrated cutting-edge technology into underfunded schools, hoping to drum up philanthropic support. The venue was lavish, a 5-star hotel ballroom overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and violin music mingled with the hum of high-stakes conversation. Alicia wore a flowing cobalt gown, tailored to accommodate her growing baby bump. She felt both regal and uneasy, noting the stares from various acquaintances. She wondered if she was imagining the undertones of gossip in their voices when they greeted her. About an hour into the gala, Veronica King swept in, wearing a sequined emerald dress that seemed to catch every flicker of light. She joined Jonathan, who stood near a champagne fountain, exchanging pleasantries with Tony McAllister. Veronica's arrival sparked a shift in the air. Jonathan's posture straightened, and there was a palpable current of electricity as they spoke. Alicia approached, heart thudding. She joined the circle just in time to hear Jonathan praising Veronica. She single-handedly brought in an Indonesian sovereign fund for our latest project. Imagine what she'll do next year. Veronica laughed softly, thanking him, while shooting a quick, coded look in his direction. That fleeting glance felt like a secret confession. Tony McAllister then turned to Alicia, politely inquiring about her philanthropic interests. Seizing the opportunity, she shared her concept for bridging education gaps through advanced technology. Though Tony listened, Alicia sensed a general distraction in the group, as if her words were overshadowed by the silent drama swirling between Jonathan and Veronica. She pressed on regardless, determined to stand her ground.